conservatives in this country, anytime Americans attempt to organize for their rights, conservatives will cry out communism, will cry out socialist agitation. They need to be deported. But you can take a look at these peoples who are just normal like you and me. I don't think that they're communist. I don't think that they're socialist. I think that they're human beings, people like you and me participating in movements seeking justice and economic equality. So get to know what the Red Scare is all about. Do not be afraid of social change and the development of consciousness. Now, as we can see, Roosevelt and his administration, his advisors, and the businessmen who supported Roosevelt understood that measures had to be taken quickly to give jobs, provide relief, and regulate labor disputes. But it wasn't all of a sudden just because they thought that they are going to protect or they're going to think about the immigrant or the immigrant's children. The National Labor Relations Act, or what is known as the Wagner Act, after its sponsor, New York Senator Robert F. Wagner, is a 1935 United States federal law that limits the means with which employers may react to workers in the private sector who create labor unions, who are also known as trade unions. Now, this act is very important because the idea is to eliminate the violence, as we see in the 1934 strikes. And the idea is to force owners to engage in collective bargaining and to take part in strikes and other forms of concerted activity by the workers in support of their demands. President Roosevelt signed the legislation and law on July 5th, 1935. And this law defined and prohibited 5 unfair labor practices. And these prohibitions still exist, while others have been added under labor legislation or under later legislation. Now, the original employer unfair labor practices consisted of interfering with, restraining, or coercing employees in their rights under Section 7. And these rights include freedom of association, mutual aid or protection, self-organization, to form, join, or assist labor organizations, to bargain collectively for wages and working conditions through representatives of their own choosing, and to engage in other protected concerted activities with or without a union. So the Wagner Act is very important. It prohibits another practices from dominating or interfering with the formation or administration of any labor organization. It prohibits discriminating against employees to encourage or discourage acts of support for a labor organization. It prohibits discriminating against employees who falsify charges or testify. And it prohibits refusing to bargain collectively with the representatives of employers, employees. So big business obviously thought it was too helpful to labor, and they opposed it. Roosevelt was cool to it, but as we have seen by these labor outbursts, it suggested the need for legislative action. So again, we can see how socialist organizing influenced progressive reform. The previous immigrant generation, now the children of immigrants and the immigrants themselves, are going to ask the federal government, please support us. So in 1934 and 1935, hundreds of thousands of workers that were left out of the tightly controlled exclusive unions of the trades, known as the American Federation of Labor, they began organizing in the new mass production industries of auto, rubber, and the packing houses. And this new union is going to be a committee first. The AFL could no longer ignore them. And in 1935, the American Federation of Labor, there was a convention that the conservative leadership was challenged by David Dubinsky of the International Longshoremen and Warehousemen's Union, by John Lewis of the United Mine Workers, and Sidney Hillman of the Amalgamated Clothing Workers. And a resolution to organize the mass of industrial workers was defeated, and these 3 walked out and formed what will be known as the Committee for Industrial Organizations. It became known as the CIO. But at first it was just a committee. And the committee was set up to organize workers outside of craft lines. By industry, all workers in a plant belonged to one union. So this committee was very important. It began to address what immigrants and children of immigrants had been asking for in terms of a living wage. Now, as Howard Zinn describes in his epic volume of A People's History of the United States,